have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power,
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Hey, what do you say, friends and neighbors? So good to see you today on a Monday, a big Monday, October 13th. Thank you for joining us here on the Bill Press Show. Hope you had a great weekend and are ready to dive into the big news of the day, the big stories of the day. We'll get it right after. We're just getting started on a Monday morning. And we'll tell you what's going on here in Washington, around the country, around the globe. And then, of course, take your calls. We're here with you on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV, our worldwide video stream, youtube.com/TawkrTV. It's Columbus Day, of course, if anybody still celebrates that dumb holiday. Frankly, I'm waiting for Leif Erikson Day and then we can really celebrate the founder of America. Federal government, though, is shut down. They don't care. They'll shut down for any excuse. So there is no presidential schedule today and no White House briefing today. And, of course, Congress, they've been out of town already for 2 or 3 weeks. Every day's a holiday for them. The focus, of course, in the news is on Dallas, where a nurse, one of the healthcare workers who treated Thomas Eric Duncan, that Ebola patient from Liberia who died last week, this nurse herself has come down with the disease. She is in isolation today and in treatment. But the big question is, wearing all of that protective gear, how did she come in contact with the fluids of the patient? How did she contract the disease? And how many other healthcare workers might also be exposed? All of those people who were working with Thomas Harris Duncan are now in quarantine and being very, very closely monitored for any trace of the disease. The CDC is conducting a complete investigation. So no need to panic. It's just one case in the United States and one case in Spain, only 2 cases outside of Africa, but still major concern. We'll talk about a lot today and take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. Good to have you with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I'm not necessarily looking out and seeing all these water-wasting lawns and people that aren't as connected to their neighbors and their lives as they could be. I'm walking down the street looking, going, edible oases, rainwater-fed landscape, and just looking at the possibility of these sort of landscapes up and down the streets of neighborhoods and communities all across this world. Small actions do ripple and they add up and they have a cumulative impact. And so when you're building upon your small mindful actions, you have the confidence and the ability to take on something a little bit greater. So that would be nice. This, in the context of where we're at as a planet with climate change and these really big issues and people that are more disconnected and less skilled than ever, it becomes even more amazing and powerful how much of a solution this is to design these ecological gardens and to come together with shared vision and shared voice. There's never been a time where your choices have mattered more. Doing something as simple as us transforming a landscape creates a model that anybody could look at far and wide, and you're sharing food and connecting and building skills together in your own neighborhood. It's a richer way to live in normal times, but in the new normal of climate change and erratic weather and economic upheaval, it becomes essential. Whether it's me, you, Gandhi, Che, MLK, Willy Wonka, whoever, past, present, or future, the power of our daily actions is all that we have. And like our community said, give me a place to stand and a lever long enough and I'll move the world. And that's what those simple actions do. They move the world every day.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
And online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Happy Columbus Day! Does anybody still believe Columbus discovered America? Why are we celebrating Columbus Day? I don't know. Not a day off for us. Probably not for most of you either. Hey, hello, everybody. Here we are. Let's just put it this way. It's the 13th of October. It's Monday. This is the Bill Press Show. We are here with you, as always, on your local progressive talk radio station, and it's so good to see you on this Monday. Hope you had a great weekend, watched a lot of good sports, a lot of good baseball, and are ready to go into this new week with a full head of steam. Good to see you today. Thank you for joining us again on your local radio station or on one of the great radio apps, the TuneIn app or the iHeartRadio app. Both of them are free. Either one, you can reach us. If you don't have a progressive radio station near you, and too many of you don't, sadly, we're going to try to fix that one of these days. And we're also glad to see those of you joining us on Free Speech TV, where you can not only hear us, but see us. And it's good to see all of you today, as well as worldwide. See all of our friends around the globe on TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV, that international flair of the Bill Press Show on TawkrTV. How about it? We've got, we're still, some of our teams still celebrating the 4-day work week. Lisa Murphy decided she's only going to do 4 days this week, so she's got the day off. Peter Ogburn is here. You and I are in for the long haul.
Seems like it, right? Yeah. I think we're both here all week.
Damn. See what I can do.
It's only Monday.
Alicia Cruz here. I've got ready to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. And, yes, Cyprian Volding made it in today. And our videographer on the job, as always. We thank you all. Well, so much for that, the dream of a... we weren't sure what to call it, whether we were going to call it the Beltway series or the Parkway series.
It doesn't matter anymore, right?
No. That was going to be, remember, between the Nats and the Orioles. Well, it ain't going to happen for sure because the Nats dropped out, and boy, the Orioles got off to a not too promising a start, sadly. Friday and Saturday, losing both to the Kansas City Royals, whom you must admit are red hot.
The O's are still in it, but the story of the year right now are the Kansas City Royals. I mean, they are on fire right now.
Yeah, they really are. And the Orioles played good baseball, but, obviously not
Royals
good enough.
Played better.
And then you got this other great series between the Giants and the Cardinals. That started with the Giants picking off number 1 in St. Louis, stunned the St. Louis Cardinals. Yesterday, the Cardinals came roaring back, and it was sort of a Nats kind of finish. Went right to the 9th inning, bottom of the 9th. Score is tied. All they need to do is score 1 run, and here's what it sounded like on, what is that station? KMOX in St. Louis.
Swing it along one. Get up, baby. Get up, get up, get up. Good night. 1-1 in this series. Another home run. Unbelievable. Wong, a leadoff home run in the bottom of the 9th, and the Cardinals win it 5-4.
Yeah, it's a walk-off home run. Yes, get up, baby, get up, baby, get up, baby. Get up. Yeah, there's a sports announcer for that team. He doesn't have to pretend.
Yeah, right. Unbelievable.
Where his heart is, he's got it, man. All right, so they go to San Francisco, right? I guess they'll play on Tuesday in San Francisco. Right, man. But great baseball here at the end of the year. And this is best of 7, so still
time. Still obviously
time for the Orioles and still time, well, obviously.
Cardinals and Giants are on even ground, yeah.
Even ground, exactly. Hey, lots going on today. We'll check in with our good friend Scott Bland at the hotline later in the hour. Have reporters here from The Hill and from USA Today, and Jess McIntosh here from Emily's List, some very, very important races with strong Democratic women candidates around the country for Senate and for governor. We'll check in with her on all of those. And, of course, the big news is we now have a nurse in Dallas with Ebola. But first,
this is the Full Court
Peter.
Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Call it a sign of the times, Bill. You remember back in the 70s and 80s, doctors were examining the dangers of kids watching too much TV, right? Whether or not it's healthy and what kind of effect it had on kids' brains. Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics kicks off their annual conference this week, and the big thing that they're going to be looking at is...
Internet.
Well, close. Touch screens.
Oh, yeah.
iPads, iPhones, tablets, things like that. What kind of effect that has on children. They've never really taken a look at it. Obviously, it's relatively new technology. So they're going to be taking a look at what kind of effect that it will have on, say, like a 2-year-old if they're using touch screens all day.
I'll tell you, when our grandkids were here last weekend and we took them to the Natural History Museum, all they wanted to do was do those, the machines where you bring up the displays by touching the screen.
And they know how to do it.
They know how to do it, baby.
Yeah, yeah. The Who, the rock band with Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend, will celebrate their 50th anniversary next year. And so to celebrate, they are hitting the road. They announced that they are hitting the road on the Who Hits 50 tour. It'll be 2 separate legs, running from mid-April to the end of May, and then the second leg going from September and October. They're going to be hitting Europe and all over the United States, including...
They're doing 2 separate tours because they have to take a long nap.
Yes, exactly. I imagine they'll have like the show starting at like 3:30 in the afternoon because they really got to. Yeah, exactly. Right. They'll be here in Washington D.C. the 1st of November, again of next year.
You've seen your tickets?
That's right, the early bird special to go to the concert. And Daniela Liverani went on a backpacking trip across Asia. She lives in Edinburgh, Scotland, and she had a bike spill. She was riding her bike, she fell, she busted her nose, and so a couple weeks later she came home and said she felt that she had like a blood clot in her nose because she kept having this thing in her nose. So she finally went to the doctor, and it turns out it was not a blood clot, Bill. It was a 3-inch long leech that had latched onto the inside of her nose, and she brought it back from Asia to Scotland. The doctors had to pin her down on the table and use forceps to pull the leech out.
Good Lord.
It is a horrifying story, and even more horrifying pictures that accompany the story. We'll make sure to tweet that out at BP Show if you want to take a look at this giant leech.
I really don't want to know about this.
Good morning.
Yeah, right.
Good
Did you have
morning.
a tapeworm, too? I mean, did you make it any more disgusting? Yes. Trouble on the Ebola front. Woke up yesterday morning, checked my phone. I was going, as you know, I did, I hope you know, was on Fox News yesterday with Howie Kurtz on the Media Buzz show. And I knew one of the things we're going to be talking about was Ebola and the way the media has been covering. And I think stirring up panic over the top over the Ebola story. But anyway, when I picked up my iPhone, first thing yesterday morning, there was the news from the New York Times that we have our first homegrown Ebola patient here in the United States, a nurse in Dallas who had been treating Thomas Eric Duncan, the man who came here from Liberia, had contracted the disease in Liberia and checked into the hospital in Dallas. He was mistakenly sent home, as we know, and then came back to the hospital when he got a fever. At that time, this nurse had treated him. We don't know her name. I haven't seen her name at any rate. But Dr. Dan Varga at the Dallas Presbyterian Hospital says that she was monitoring herself, by the way. All of the healthcare workers who were treating this man from Africa were monitoring themselves for signs of the disease. She felt herself getting a little fever. She goes back to her hospital. Dr. Dan Varga tells us everything moved very quickly from then on.
The entire process, from the patient self-monitoring to the admission into isolation, took less than 90 minutes. The patient's condition is stable. A close contact has also been proactively placed in isolation.
And the question, though, that Dr. Varga raises, which all of us have, is she was following protocol. She was wearing all the necessary protective gear. How could this happen?
This individual was following full CDC precautions, which are barrier and droplet. So gown, glove, mask, and shield.
But as Dr. Tom Frieden, who is the head, of course, of the CDC, we've seen a lot of him lately, he gave a news conference right at 11 o'clock yesterday, East Coast time, when we were starting Media Buzz. He also appeared later with Bob Schieffer on Face the Nation and admitted that there was a slip-up here.
We're deeply concerned about this new development with a preliminary positive in a healthcare worker who cared for the index patient in Dallas on multiple occasions after his diagnosis. I think the fact that we don't know of a breach in protocol is concerning because clearly there was a breach in protocol.
A breach in protocol meaning at some point, somehow, she did something wrong, either in they suspect maybe in taking off the garments where there was there could have been some contact, or perhaps in one of the procedures that they, for example, he had a feeding tube, I believe, placed down his throat. There were procedures that they had to do with him, which required some actual body contact. They don't know. Dr. Frieden said in his news conference they will conduct a complete investigation to find out what the breach of protocol was. They have talked to her. She couldn't tell them. She doesn't know what she may have done wrong, what step along the way, and she treated him many times, at what point she may have come in contact with those fluids. But they're going to investigate to try to find out.
We will undertake a complete investigation of how this may have occurred. That's so important so we can understand it better and intervene to prevent this from happening in the future.
So my question to you is, and we asked this question last week, do you still trust the government to get it right? Now, I don't want to be a part of the media spreading any panic. Let's keep this in perspective, okay? 88,000 people die of alcohol-related deaths in this country every year. Some 400,000 die of tobacco-related deaths. So let's keep it really in perspective. Right now, we're talking about one man who died of Ebola who did not get it in this country. We're talking about only 2 cases of Ebola outside of West Africa, one in Spain and one in this country. So we're talking one person who contracted Ebola in this country. She is in isolation and she's getting the best care possible. So let's remember what we're talking about. No need for panic here. But at the same time, there is need for concern, I believe, because this is the same hospital where there was a breach of protocol where this man came in, said he'd come from West Africa, should have been kept there right away just because of where he came from, instead was sent home because there was some failure. They admit that in communication. That first breach of protocol. And now we have a second breach of protocol in the same hospital where one of the healthcare workers treating this man and following all the procedures that she was told still either slipped up or wasn't given sufficient directions, or the protocol wasn't, we don't know yet. But what we do know, we heard the head of the CDC admit there was a breach of protocol which ended up in her getting the disease, and all the other healthcare workers who treated him are now in isolation as well, and being quarantined and being monitored, I guess, in isolation, you can say. And so that raised a question to me. How much can we trust them to get it right? And this is one hospital. What about every other hospital in this country? Do we really think, can we really believe that every single hospital, no matter what hospital, that anybody who thinks they might have this because they came in contact with somebody from West Africa or they are from West Africa could walk into any hospital in this country and say, I think I might have some little indication, some signs here, right, of the Ebola disease symptoms, and that hospital will know what to do? Dr. Richard Besser, who's a health expert on ABC News yesterday, raised this question himself.
I don't think that you can expect an American hospital that doesn't specialize in this to have their employees follow what needs to be done to truly be safe.
So where are we with this? Do you trust the health system? Do you trust our health professionals? Do you trust the CDC? Are you concerned? Ebola, first homegrown Ebola patient in the United States. 866-55-PRESS is our toll-free number. Let's talk about it here on a Monday morning on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we are 26 minutes after the hour talking about this first Ebola case in Dallas, a healthcare worker, a nurse who treated the man from Liberia who died of the disease last week at that same hospital. It was chilling, I thought, yesterday to hear Dr. Frieden from the CDC say that we may see more cases. This is unlikely to be the only one because there are some 48 people he didn't name them, but stated that 48 people who had come into contact with Thomas Eric Duncan in some way, nurses and doctors, healthcare professionals who were treating him. He said there was no risk outside of that circle, but certainly those people and the people that they have come in contact with, that's a little wider circle than we thought. Cause for concern, not for panic, but for concern? I think so. Up in Ithaca, New York on WNYY. Hello, Helen.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, hi.
Everyone. I'm thinking this Ebola thing is a good, this is something I've been working on for a few years. We have New York single payer, universal health care, Medicare for all. Like, we do not want people who are sick to not get treated, especially with this. So Ebola it's a horrible, horrible thing, but it's an opportunity for us to join the rest of the industrialized world and get, Medicare for all, universal health care, which is what, like, most of the industrialized world has.
Yeah, or
healthcare is not supposed to be a privilege; it should be a right.
Absolutely. And Helen, we used to call it single payer, but Medicare for all, I like. I wish President Obama had gone there, and I wish he had called it that. Paul, as a reminder of how important that is. Paul in Lucerne, California. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Bill. Well, this is an example of why we need a functional government. Right now we have a dysfunctional party in our government, and we don't have a Surgeon General because of this. The Surgeon General is the organization, the part of government that takes the lead and for stuff like this.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, we do not have a Surgeon General right now because of that intransigent, do-nothing Republicans in Congress. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent point. That came up yesterday on our Media Buzz show on Fox News as well. More calls. This is really, here we are now. We've got the first homegrown case of Ebola in Texas. Are you concerned?
Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Here we are, 34 minutes now after the hour. We're kind of taking the pulse of America this Monday when we hear over the weekend that we now have the first case of Ebola contracted here in the United States by an American citizen, not someone who came here from West Africa. It's a nurse at the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas, one of the healthcare workers who treated Thomas Eric Duncan, the man from West Liberia, who came to Dallas and who died of the disease last week. You know, in one sense, I mean, this is another case of a real hero, a healthcare worker who put her life on the line, if you will, doing her job. I mean, this is a tradition. I mean, this goes back, I think, of as a kid growing up, Father Damien, who was a missionary for the lepers on Moloch, what's it, island in Hawaii? Molokai, I think, is the name of the island. Anyhow, where the leper colony used to be, and he was there with them for years and years. Himself contracted the disease. So this woman did this in the line of her duty. Still, it's it's scary and it's of concern when she was following. We want our healthcare workers to be protected. She was following all the necessary protocols, everything that she was told, wearing all the protective gear, and still she caught the disease. And there were a total of 48 people who were involved taking care of this man off and on. All of them now are under observation. All of them are either being self-monitored or being monitored by hospital officials to make sure that there are no other cases. That it does concern for us, I think, and also concern for members of the health community. Zane Cortez is the head of the National Nurses organization called National Nurses United, who spoke out yesterday raising the concern about whether all nurses are going to have the protective gear that they need.
37% say their hospital has insufficient current supplies of eye protection, which includes face shields or side shields with goggles for daily use on their unit.
So, again, with all these hospitals in the country, can we have confidence that all of them are equipped to deal with this? Of concern to you, 866-55-PRESS, or do you think we can trust the CDC to get it right, even though now there have been 2 breaches of protocol, 2 at the same hospital in Dallas? Andrea is calling from South Haven, Michigan.
Yes, I was calling. I was actually going to tell you about that survey from the National Nurse
Okay.
United,
Yeah.
because that is a union and professional association for nurses. I am a registered nurse. I've been one for 30 years in Chicago. And that organization yesterday issued a critique against the CDC for blaming that nurse for a breach of protocol, because we really don't know what happened there. She was saying that 80% of hospitals have not provided policy for admission or potential infected patients throughout the United States. Now, at my husband's hospital, where he's a nurse, they just got protocol last week, and they are testing every patient who comes through the ER, whether they've traveled or not. It doesn't matter if they're infants or 90 years old. They're being tested. But this survey was really important, and I think it's important to put in perspective that the nurse may not have really been the cause of this problem.
Well,
we may not know as much about this virus as we need to.
Yeah, Tom Friedman, I didn't think he was being too critical of her yesterday. He did say they had talked with her, and she could not identify what may have gone wrong. Right? She couldn't.
Well, one of the comments that he made that kind of bugged me is that he said that the biggest opportunity for breach occurs when workers go on break, and they remove their uniforms too quickly, or their protective gear too quickly, and how many of us even get a break?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But the other part is that when you're working with something as dangerous as Ebola, I can assure you that the majority, if not every patient who comes into contact, every nurse who comes in contact with that patient is going to be scared to death. It will be taking every precaution to make sure that they don't do anything to put themselves or others in danger.
Andrea, are there some procedures which require removing part of that gear, just in order to carry them out?
I've not worked with Ebola per se, but I have worked with other infected
Mm-hmm.
patients, and there are procedures in place where you pretty much do it within the area of the patient, but outside. It's hard to explain, but yes, there are procedures in place that really should work, and we have infectious disease nurses that are constantly checking these areas that are at highest risk, and they're monitoring the protocols. They're monitoring what we do, how we apply our masks, how we put on our gloves, how we dispose of equipment, including needles, not just the uniforms that we wear, the garb that we wear, but every single aspect of how we do our care.
But this garb, when you put it on and then you take it off at the end of that shift, is it ever worn again, or is it just disposed of?
It is. I believe it is worn again because it's put in special containers for a special kind of laundry procedure. So it's not put in with the general hospital laundry. It is kept separate from the hospital laundry, and I believe it is laundered with a special protocol.
What is your either guess or that maybe you know from the National Nurses Association, or what's the group, the National Nurses United?
Yes.
What is your guess about how well equipped your average hospital is around the country to deal with this if someone walked in the door today?
My personal opinion is that it's going to vary by hospital. It's going to vary by whether or not it's a for-profit or not-for-profit, because they tend to put everything into a template procedure, and it doesn't necessarily follow good hospital and healthcare practice. And that's one of the problems that I think we've had with this epidemic and a lot of other aspects of healthcare, is that they expect us to kind of work as if we're caring for widgets and not caring for patients with individual problems.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're caring for two patients with the same disease, whether it's infectious or not, they're not the same.
Right.
No two people, no two illnesses are ever the same. So to get back to your question, I think it depends on a lot more variables than I can answer, but I do believe that it is not uniform. I do think we need to get a Surgeon General in office, and I think we need to refund the National Institute of Health.
Absolutely. In fact, there's another story this morning I didn't even get to yet where the head of the National Institute of Health is blaming budget cuts for hospitals not being ready to deal with this disease here in this country. Andrea, so good to hear from you, and thank you for your good work and for your information this morning. Out in Chicago on WCPT, hello, Carl. Hey, thanks for joining us.
How you doing, Bill?
All right. What do you think?
You know what? Happy Monday, by the way.
Thank you. And you.
I was thinking that there might have been there could have been a strong possibility. A lot of hospitals are operated on a profit motive these days, and that first patient that came in that had a slight temperature, and on his form that he filled out, that he was required to fill out, that they read when they fill it out, that he said that he came from Liberia, that a decision had to be made. And if he was in early stages of Ebola, I could picture somebody thinking about the cost that they could incur, that they rejected him and gave him some aspirin or antibiotic, and told him to leave because they wouldn't have had to start to gear up for Ebola and start spending money. And I think a possible solution to prevent that from happening is that the government should incentivize hospitals that if they do take in patients that have Ebola and they're incurring the cost for the hazmat suits and various things, that the government don't worry about it. We're going to incentivize you and give you additional funds to make up for what we're trying to do here, because in the long run it could cost a lot more. And in addition to that, if the patient it's determined that he does have Ebola, and they're treating him and they're trying to get the serum that they have, possibly there's a shortage, but they're getting more and more of it now. If they save that patient, that they would get an additional incentive monetary bonus. And I think the whole complexion of this thing would change.
Yeah. Well, you know, I definitely think the government's going to have to help these hospitals. Federal government's going to have to somehow help these hospitals deal with this because that's an incredible cost and an additional burden, which they're not, profit or not profit, they're just not capable of doing. Thanks, Carl, so much for the call. I would just disagree with you on one point. They certainly made a mistake in sending this guy home. I don't think that they had any suspicion at the time that he was in the early stages of Ebola. I just think they thought maybe he had some kind of a flu. I think if they had suspected Ebola, they would not have sent him home. It was a mistake to send him home, however. And, you know, these days, hospitals don't keep anybody in that they don't have to, man, for a lot of different reasons. But at any rate, a real screw-up. Now, there have been two of them at the same hospital. Yes, concern, no panic, but yes, concern. When we come back, News of the Day with Scott Bland from the National Journal Hotline.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately I've been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey, here we are 12 minutes now before the top of the hour on a Monday, October 13. You want to know what's going on here on the political front in Washington, D.C., or around the country in any of the important midterm races, whether for Senate, Governor, or for the House? Go to the Hotline, a National Journal Hotline. And Scott Bland is the editor-in-chief, joining us on our news line this morning. Hello, Scott. Good to have you back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let me start out. We've been talking a little bit about Ebola here, which obviously has been occupying a lot of the president's time. So you're president of the United States, and you hear there's a woman in Dallas who's contracted the Ebola virus. I mean, what can you really do about that?
Well, there's a few different issues going on that the president can do. There's travel restrictions. There's, there's directing law enforcement and other police activity. There's obviously, at this point, directing research activity is a little too late. But
and he said he wants them to speed up their investigation, but
right.
Short of that, I mean, we don't even have a Surgeon General now that he can call on to say, get on top of this, right? Because his nominee for Surgeon General has been blocked by Republicans in the House. So it's sort of a... I mean, it just must be a frustrating thing for it. Maybe it's a sign of that there are some limits even to the president, the position of president of the United States.
Yeah, I think the past year has actually been a study in what the limits to the power of a presidency is for President Obama. And I remember talking to a Democrat on the phone about the time that Ebola started to kind of come up as an issue when it was first starting in Africa, and I remember him saying that to be in the Oval Office for that meeting, just Ebola, really, with everything else that's going wrong in the world over the last few months, it's just been really a string of bad news over the last 2 months that the president has had to deal with one after another.
Right. ISIS, Secret Service, VA, and now, yes. Oh, what? Ebola? Really? Yeah, I'm sure I can see that. Now, Scott, you keep on top of all of these midterm elections, both for Senate, particularly Senate and governor, the big ones this year. And we haven't seen the president standing up alongside of many candidates, but the first lady has been on the road, not always with the best success. She was out in Iowa just the end of last week for Congressman Bruce Braley, who is running for the Senate against Joni Ernst. Somebody maybe forgot to prep her fully. Here is the first lady. Listen carefully.
I am beyond thrilled to be here today to support your next senator from Iowa, our friend Bruce Bailey. You need to elect Bruce Bailey to the U.S. Senate. You got to do it. Leaders like Bruce Bailey. So we need to elect leaders like Bruce Bailey who will do the same. Just think about how many precincts all of us just in this room right now could swing for Bruce Bailey. Or you can go to vote.brucebailey.com. That's vote.brucebailey.com. Or even better, you can... Braley, what did I say? I'm losing it.
Yeah, 7 times she says Bruce Bailey. Oh, it's embarrassing, Scott, huh?
Ouch.
Woo, yeah.
I wouldn't have liked to have been the candidate sitting there listening to that. It's interesting. I actually saw on Twitter that Mitt Romney was in Iowa for Braley's opponent, Joni Ernst, and kept calling him Bill Braley, I think.
Bill Bailey?
But obviously, it's a little worse when it's coming from your side.
I could see that he might do that as a joke, right? You know, Bill Bailey, won't you please come home or something? Yeah, but she certainly should have been prepped on the name of the candidate. But the more important thing is, how's that race looking?
It is very, very close. Shaping up as one of the closest races in the country. The Des Moines Register and Bloomberg Politics released a new poll there over the weekend. 1-point race showing Ernst with a nominal lead. It's going to come down to the wire, and it's one of the more interesting Senate races in the country. Both candidates pretty well flawed, but it's going to end up coming down to which flaws the Iowans find more disqualifying. Kind of Braley's history of not so great comments versus some of the policy positions that Ernst has taken.
Yeah, and I guess like in many other races, it's going to come down to turnout. If it's that close, turnout is definitely going to make the difference. All right, Scott, good to check in with you as always. Thanks so much, Scott. All right, start off the week with you. Enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Bland from the National Journal Hotline, nationaljournal.com, editor-in-chief.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune into Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
The Ad Council.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, you know, I hate to tell you this, but I have Ebola.
What?
Yeah. Actually, I do have Ebola. I got this in the mail from one of our listeners, Jessica. Right? It is actually a little stuffed
plush toy.
Little plush toy.
It looks just like the Ebola
just
virus.
looks like the Ebola virus. Yeah, for those of you watching on Free Speech TV can see it. I don't know what the message of this is.
I bet you're going to take this.
Whether Jessica wants me to get it or not to get it.
She wanted to give you Ebola.
Yeah, well, she did. So I guess, thank you, Jessica, I guess. Also, Jessica, in case Ebola's not bad enough, sent me these, which are anthrax. Little anthrax capsules.
Hey, thanks.
Another plush toy and everything.
This is the Bill
Merry
Press
Christmas.
Show.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Hey, what do you say, friends and neighbors? So good to see you today on a Monday, a big Monday, October 13th. Thank you for joining us here on the Bill Press Show. Hope you had a great weekend and are ready to dive into the big news of the day, the the big stories of the day. We'll get it right after. We're just getting started on a Monday morning. And we'll tell you what's going on here in Washington, around the country, around the globe. And then, of course, take your calls. We're here with you on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV, our worldwide video stream, youtube.com/TawkrTV. It's Columbus Day, of course, if anybody still celebrates that dumb holiday. Frankly, I'm waiting for Leif Erikson Day, and then we can really celebrate the founder of America. Federal government, though, is shut down. They don't care. They'll shut down for any excuse. So there is no presidential schedule today and no White House briefing today. And, of course, Congress, they've been out of town already for 2 or 3 weeks. Every day's a holiday for them. The focus, of course, in the news is on Dallas, where a nurse, one of the healthcare workers who treated Thomas Eric Duncan, that Ebola patient from Liberia who died last week, this nurse herself has come down with the disease. She is in isolation today and in treatment. But the big question is, wearing all of that protective gear, how did she come in contact with the fluids of the patient? How did she contract the disease? And how many other healthcare workers might also be exposed? All of those people who were working with Thomas Eric Duncan are now in quarantine and being very, very closely monitored for any trace of the disease. The CDC is conducting a complete investigation. So no need to panic. It's just one case in the United States and one case in Spain, only 2 cases outside of Africa, but still major concern. We'll talk about a lot today and take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. Good to have you with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are 3 incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Happy Leif Erikson Day. Come on. He discovered America. He was the first one from Europe to land here 500 years before Columbus. So why are we celebrating Columbus Day? Well, we're not celebrating either one, actually. We're at work, and you probably are too. Happy Monday, October 13, The Bill Press Show, coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Just about everybody else is out of town, but we're here because we want you to know what's going on this Monday all around the globe, all around the country, and here in Washington, D.C. We'll tell you what's going on. You tell us what it all means to you. So good to see you this Monday. Thanks for joining us on your local progressive talk radio station or on Free Speech TV or worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. And we love hearing from you on the phone at 866-55-PRESS. Love getting your acidic comments on Twitter or on Facebook. On Twitter at BP Show and Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Here we are, team in place this morning, more or less. Lisa Murphy out for the day. Peter Ogburn wearing 2 or 3 hats this morning.
I'm here, sir.
Thank
I'm
you,
here.
Sir. All right. Good weekend?
Yes, indeed. A great weekend.
Good.
Yeah, it was very nice.
All right. Alicia Cruz is here on the phones, ready to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS, leading our army of phone operators, and Cyprian Bolding. He's got all the cameras working this morning and the lights on and keeping us looking good on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV. Videographer Cyprian Bolding. You know, when I was growing up, I played, my instrument was, I played the accordion.
Is that right?
Yes.
Cyprian.
Polka. Roll out
Is
the
that
barrel.
right?
That was my specialty. Roll out the barrel anyhow. But and
I didn't know that.
Well, I'm glad you didn't know that. And I tell you that because I wouldn't. The last thing I would have wanted, I was on Crossfire or whatever, the Spin Room or on the Bill Press Show, would have been for somebody to say, "Oh, I know you used to play the accordion. Here, could you play some accordion for us?" Right? That would be very, very embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as what happened to Chuck Todd, the new host of. You stay out of here, Cyprian.
I was like, Cyprian might have an accordion in there.
Well, no, it's Chuck Todd, the new host of Meet the Press, going around the country, doing a little fanfare, a little celebration of his new post, and he appeared on the NBC affiliate out there in downtown Chicago. I've been in that building many times, right along the Chicago River, and the host surprised him. He used to play the French horn, they found out, when he was in high school, maybe college too.
He got a scholarship. He was so good at it. Yeah, he actually got a scholarship to play the French horn.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Right. Well, then he advanced a little bit more with the French horn than I ever did with the accordion. But so they surprised him. They brought in a French horn.
We rented this for the day. Very clean mouthpiece. Would you play us something?
Oh,
well, let's see.
Oh my God!
Boy, this is going to be tough.
Uh-oh.
At least you got the NBC at the end.
Yeah, you got the chimes there at the end.
Yeah, a little shaky dog.
Oh, a little pitchy dog. Little pitchy dog. Holy cow.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for embarrassing me right in front of
Yeah, what a move, by the way. Yeah, here, we heard you used to play the French horn. Do it now on live television.
Yeah, right. And make a fool of yourself.
Oh, man. That's
hey, we have reporters coming in from USA Today and from The Hill, and Jess McIntosh, communications director for Emily's List, coming up. Leon Panetta dominating the news with his book slamming President Obama. Is he right, and is he doing the right thing? But first,
this is the Full
do you got,
Court
Peter?
Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. On the Ebola front, there was a movement to try and save the dog of the Ebola patient, Michael Eric Duncan. He had a dog named Excalibur.
Really?
He had a dog that lived in his apartment, and so there was this idea of
apartment in Liberia or here.
Oh no, I'm sorry. No,
You're talking about the nurse.
I'm talking about the nurse. I'm talking about the nurse. The nurse. There was a movement afoot to try and save the dog because they were going to put the dog down. Yes.
Right.
No. I'm talking about the one here at home.
Oh, okay.
This is the one because the one in Spain they put down, and then there was the person who lived in Dallas, not the nurse, and not Michael Eric Duncan. The original case of the person from Texas that had been to Liberia and got the disease and then came back. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I've confused the issue very much.
You really did.
All right. So the person who lives in Texas who had the Ebola virus, the dog, they were going to put the dog down because they said that it could have gone to the dog, and there was a movement afoot to save the dog Excalibur. They have said that they are not going to put Excalibur down. They're going to keep the dog alive. As you mentioned, in Spain, the person that contracted in Spain, they did put the dog down, but here at home, they are keeping the dog alive.
For now.
For now, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm glad, a little compassion there.
The hit TV cartoon show Archer, which is on FX, has been on the air for 6 seasons, and the name of the spy agency that he works for, the character Archer works for, has been called ISIS. Completely unrelated, by the way. It's just completely unrelated. It has to do with international spies. So it's been called ISIS. They have announced, the creators announced, that they are dropping the name altogether. They're just going to quietly stop referencing the place that he works. They saw that this might be an issue.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good idea. They had seen this issue start to sort of bubble up at the end of last season, so when they were putting together the most recent season, they said no more mentions of where he works. So no more ISIS. No more ISIS. And, we rely on Nielsen to give us TV ratings, who's performing and how well. And we had talked a little bit last week about how ABC News had made these leaps and bounds, and now they're doing so over NBC. Well, it turns out for the past 7 months, Nielsen had been reporting inaccurate information.
Yeah, this is embarrassing.
Completely inaccurate information. They didn't know what the numbers were exactly, so they just kind of fudged the numbers.
Yeah.
It's amazing, especially when you think about how Nielsen is the rating system that people go to advertisers and make money off of how much people are watching their product. So
millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent based on who's got the highest ratings.
Yeah.
That's where the advertisers want to go.
Yeah.
And so ABC was able to take advantage of that by getting people to say, look, more people are watching David Muir now than Brian Williams, and now Nielsen says they were wrong for the last 7 months. This is going to undermine their credibility a lot.
In a big
The
way.
other thing they're wrong about, they're having problems with, is Nielsen is an old-fashioned rating system. People do not watch television today the way they used to watch TV.
Absolutely.
I mean, how many people watch things at a given hour? Almost
these days.
No.
I would say more people watch it in other ways. Yeah.
Yeah. It's at the TiVo or whatever, right?
Online,
or
on your
watch
phone,
it online. Sure, or watch it at any time.
Yeah.
I mean, like this show, you can bring up this show on
Anytime.
TawkrTV at any time and watch the whole show. Don't have to watch it live.
Yeah.
And Nielsen, this is a big body blow for Nielsen.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Peter. Yes, indeed, Leon Panetta continues his speaking out on every media appearance he can, selling his book called Worthy Choices. I've taken a look at it and wanted to get your take on it this morning. By the way, also, Peter tweeted out my column last Friday on this issue, where the headline on my column is Panetta bites the hand that fed him. And you got to start out by saying, Leon Panetta is a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. He's a very dedicated public servant, very talented, very gifted. Very few Americans have contributed as much to their country as Leon Panetta did, serving in the military, serving in the Nixon White House, then going back to California, running for Congress. He was Republican, changed his party, went back to California, ran for Congress, served in the Congress, as a Democrat, and served in the Congress for years as a Democrat from the Monterey Carmel area, seat now held by my good friend Sam Farr. Leon Panetta left the Congress to become budget director for President Bill Clinton. He was then Clinton's chief of staff at the White House. Back to California, founded the Leon and Sylvia Panetta Institute, and then came back as CIA director in 2009, appointed by President Obama, and then moved over to defense secretary. So he served in some very, very, very key positions. And certainly what he has to say about his government service is of interest. And he's got a right to tell his story anytime he wants and say anything he wants. Nobody would take that away from him. At the same time, and I'm sure you've seen enough and heard enough about the Panetta book that you've got your thoughts about it too. And I've got two quarrels with Leon with this book, which I talk about in my column. And one of them is that I disagree with the substance of some things he says, and the second is I disagree with the timing of the book. On the substance, Panetta says, like John McCain has been saying, boy, we got a problem with ISIS, but if only the president had listened to me and left 5,000 troops in Iraq instead of pulling those troops out, that residual force in Iraq, we wouldn't be in the mess that we are today. Well, I just don't buy that. I don't buy that for a couple of reasons. Number one, ISIS grew up in Syria, and these troops would have been in Iraq. And number two, President Obama himself wanted to leave residual troops in Iraq. He has told us that. We know that. Al-Maliki, then Prime Minister of Iraq, refused to give our troops immunity. And without that, the president said he was not going to leave the troops there. Not only the president said that at the time, Leon Panetta said it at the time. The defense secretary, and in my column I quote him, the testimony he gave on Capitol Hill, he told members of the Senate Armed Forces Committee that without immunity, I, as defense secretary, will not allow American troops to remain in Iraq. So it was his policy, too, that he's condemning President Obama for carrying out, number one. And on Syria, the other thing he says is that we wouldn't have ISIS today if we had only given arms to the moderate Syrian opposition. Again, same thing John McCain is saying. It's easy to say, but hey, when you think about it, really? We were going to just hand out arms? What were we going to do? Have a big warehouse? And anybody who came in could walk out with whatever weapons they wanted? These were people, the so-called moderate Syrian opposition, who were unorganized, untrained, unvetted. We didn't know who the hell they were. And they couldn't have done their job without airstrikes. So what Leon Panetta really is saying is we should have started a third war against Syria, against Bashar al-Assad. I don't think the American people were ready for a war in Syria, on top of a war in Iraq and a war in Afghanistan. So on the substance, I got a problem. And on the timing, I've got to tell you too. Look, again, Panetta can say anything he wants, anytime he wants. But I question the loyalty of somebody who would put this book out right now when this president, whom he served and who gave him two of the biggest jobs in Washington, put this book out right now when the president is trying to put together a coalition against ISIS, when the president is still in office, and 20 days or 23 days before the midterm elections. The timing could not be worse for President Obama. And I think, in effect, Leon Panetta stabbed him in the back. How about you? What have you've heard enough about the Panetta book? Is he saying the right thing? Is he doing the right thing? Or is he just being disloyal to the man who gave him two of the biggest jobs in Washington? 866-55-PRESS. Change your opinion about Leon Panetta? Make you think worse of him or better of him? Let's talk about it here. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay. I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing done, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
25 minutes after the hour, Leon Panetta. His book, Slamming President Obama, but Leon Panetta says, hey, you know, that's who I am. I've always been outspoken, tell it like it is, and that's what I do in my book. Leon?
Well, I think what I want the president to do, I mean, I really think this president does want to do the right thing for the country. I really do. I think and frankly, I think he could still have a great legacy as a president. But he's going to have to jump in the ring and fight it out for the next 2 years. You could have a good legacy on the economy. You could have a good legacy in terms of trying to deal with the deficit. You could have a good legacy on energy and on health care and on national security. But he's going to have to get in the ring.
Leon Panetta giving President Obama his maybe unwanted advice. What do you think? Joey, out in Chicago. Hey, Joey, what's going on? What do you think?
With friends like that, who needs enemies, for crying out loud? My goodness, there's nothing more important than loyalty when it comes to the military and it comes to government. That man should be ashamed of himself. He is pathetic. And if I was President Obama, I would find any way I could to shove it right back in his face.
You know, Joey. In Britain, they've got a tradition. If you're working for somebody, you disagree with what they do, you resign, right? And you.
That's what I was, Bill. That was my next point.
Yeah.
If he wasn't happy with the administration, you resign. You don't save all this stuff and try to make $1 million when you retire out of government. He should have resigned. You're absolutely correct, Bill. I don't like this guy a bit.
All right, you got it, Joey. Good to hear from you. And Tom in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hello, Tom. What do you say?
Boy, I agree 100% with the previous caller. I think what the president feared in the whole idea of arming the Free Syrian Army is a replay of what we did in Afghanistan in fighting the Soviets and the Soviet-backed government, just handing out weapons to everybody, and look what happened to Afghanistan.
Yeah, no.
The Taliban came to power and set up a safe haven for al-Qaeda. So I think that was his fear. But the other thing is, why would we keep troops in Iraq if we had pushed al-Qaeda out of Iraq? Were we going to do that to intimidate al-Maliki?
Well, I guess, the thinking was maybe they were there to help provide stability or kind of whatever. But again, when al-Maliki said he was not going to provide them any protection, we've never done that anywhere in the world, right? Why make an exception for them? Tom, good to hear from you. An excellent point on the Afghanistan analogy. I thought of that too. Quickly, Doris in Newburgh, Indiana. Hi, Doris.
Hi, Bill. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think Leon is acting in a biased manner. I think he's trying to prove a point, but he's got to sit back and realize that we have Joint Chiefs of Staff, the president has advisors. He's not in this all alone. We're putting it all on the president's shoulders. You got it. Thanks, Doris. Sorry to cut you off, but we're right here out of time, but it's so good to hear from you. Thank you for the call. When we come back, Keith Laing from The Hill on Ebola.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My
heroes, not yours. You probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
This is the Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour on this Columbus Day, Monday, October 13, 2014. And we woke up yesterday to the news that we have our first homegrown Ebola patient in the United States. No need to panic, but it does make things more serious and is certainly cause for concern. This is a nurse at the Texas Health Presbyterian Hospital who was treating the patient who died last week from Liberia, Thomas Eric Duncan. She was wearing all the protective gear, we are told, that she should have been wearing, taking all the precautions, but somehow there was a breach of protocol. Somehow she was able to contract the disease. She'd been self-monitoring, monitoring herself. Since she treated Mr. Duncan. She felt a fever and went into the hospital, was diagnosed, and immediately put in isolation. Dr. Dan Varga from the hospital says once she noticed a potential problem and went into the hospital, everything happened very quickly from there.
The entire process, from the patient self-monitoring to the admission into isolation, took less than 90 minutes. The patient's condition is stable. A close contact has also been proactively placed in isolation.
But what everybody is questioning is how this could happen, because, as Dr. Vargas says, she was doing everything she'd been told to do.
This individual was following full CDC precautions, which are barrier and droplet. So gown, glove, mask, and shield.
And again, what does this mean? First of all, I think it's important to keep it in perspective. No panic here. We've had one patient die of the disease here in the United States who came here from West Africa. There are so far only 2 cases on the planet outside of West Africa. One, a nurse in Spain, and 2, now, a second one, a nurse here in the United States. And this is one case in the United States. a person who contracted the disease here in the United States. Remember, we have 400,000 people die of tobacco-related diseases every year. Some 88,000 die of alcohol-related diseases. So let's keep it in perspective. Of course, they are not contagious and deadly the way the Ebola virus is. But it does raise some concerns about whether we're really prepared for this disease when a hospital with all the attention that the Texas hospital has been getting, and all the people from the CDC who are there to monitor everything they're going, where there have been 2 breaches of protocol in a row. Yesterday, Tom Frieden, the director of the CDC, by the way, the Drudge report this morning calls the CDC the Center for Disease Confusion. Ouch. But there was a lot of confusion yesterday. So Tom Frieden, right after yesterday morning at 11 o'clock, he held a news conference shortly after he appeared on Face the Nation with Bob Schieffer and acknowledges this was a breach of protocol.
We're deeply concerned about this new development with a preliminary positive in a healthcare worker who cared for the index patient in Dallas on multiple occasions after his diagnosis. I think the fact that we don't know of a breach in protocol is concerning because clearly there was a breach in protocol.
And Dr. Frieden said yesterday in his news conference also that there may be other cases because there were as many as 48 people, not just this one nurse, who were involved in the care of Mr. Duncan. They are all under observation. They are all being monitored. Dr. Frieden insisting, however, that outside of that immediate circle, there was no risk to anyone else. It does raise the stakes, what we've learned over the weekend. Keith Laing is a staff writer for the Hill newspaper here in Washington, for which I write a column every Tuesday when they're in print. So a colleague from the Hill joining us in studio has been covering this issue. Hi, Keith. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So how much confidence can we have in the CDC or in this Texas hospital after we learn about a second breach of protocol? The first was letting Mr. Duncan go home for a couple of days. The second is somehow this nurse wearing all this gear but still getting Ebola.
It seems like there's some concern in all sectors of the nation right now. I focus primarily on transportation. I've been writing a lot about the airline industry moving to calm fears among passengers because Mr. Duncan traveled through Washington's Dulles Airport, and they're worried that they have kind of twinfold concerns. They're worried that you could see flight bans, which even the Obama administration has said would make relief efforts harder if you just shut down flights to West Africa. But they're also worried that people will stop flying because they're afraid that they're going to catch it from their seatmate on the plane. And these cases that are coming out, the second case in Dallas is not going to help that at all.
Right. Well, we've all picked up germs and colds and whatever from flying on an airplane because it's a very unhealthy environment. You can see where that fear comes from, right? In that confined space, so close to other people and everybody breathing everybody else's air. How real is that risk?
Well, the airline industry and the Obama administration have been stressing that Ebola is not an airborne disease. It's transmitted through bodily fluid, so you don't really have to worry if your seatmate coughs next to you. But with these news stories that keep coming out and this concern that's growing, there was a case last week where a gentleman who was flying from Philadelphia to the Dominican Republic sneezed on a plane and joked that he had Ebola. Oh, yeah. And they met the plane with hazmat suits, so it's a really tense time.
I saw the video of that, or at least some, I do not have Ebola, I just have a little sniffle here. But the people getting on the plane in the hazmat suit, they met the plane. Yeah. So no jokes about bombs at the airport, right? No jokes about Ebola either, I think, is a rule of the day.
Yeah, that plane ended up being delayed on the tarmac in the Dominican Republic for 2 hours, I believe, before they would even let it go to the gate. So not only did he inconvenience the crew workers there, but everybody else that was on that plane.
All right, so there did seem to be a mixed message last week in that on the one hand, the CDC and the White House were telling us there's no cause for concern. Again, this is not an airborne disease. It's really hard to get this disease. And we have total confidence in the screening that they're doing over in West Africa before people leave there, or in Europe before people would come to the United States. And then suddenly the president announced we're going to do additional screening at 5 U.S. airports. So on the one hand, no cause for concern. On the other, we're concerned enough that we're adding this additional screening. Now, this started over the weekend, right?
Yes,
At JFK?
JFK, Dulles, O'Hare, Newark, and Hartsfield in Atlanta.
So what are they doing, and what do you know?
They're doing.
What's the impact, or is it too early to say?
I think it's too early to say. What the plan is to do temperature checks for people that are arriving from West African nations, like Liberia, where Mr. Duncan was traveling from. And they're also making people fill out questionnaires with their travel history. But you've already seen some critics saying that if you're just checking for temperature as the primary sign, that if you take an Advil during your flight, you could beat this check. And this was kind of an attempt by the Obama administration to have a middle ground, because they've been saying that it would be too much of a rash decision to cancel flights, which you had a lot of Republicans in Congress calling for, canceling all flights to West Africa. They didn't want to do that, but they were clearly trying to show that they were doing something, because people were seeing all these stories on the news and becoming concerned.
Can we track these people down? I mean, I heard someone yesterday to say, we should cancel every flight from Liberia to the United States, to which I said, do you know how many direct flights there are from Liberia to the United States? Like zero.
Not many.
Right? I mean, as far as I know, zero. Yeah. They have to go somewhere, right? Mr. Duncan went to Brussels, I believe.
Yes.
So they go to Madrid, or they go to Brussels, or they go to Paris, or they go to London, or they go to Frankfurt. Can we trace them, or isn't it possible they could buy a ticket, to Frankfurt or Munich or something, and then just get there and buy another ticket, and we wouldn't know where they're coming from?
The White House said when they announced these checks that they were confident that just these 5 airports would catch 94% of the people that are coming in from Africa, from West Africa, because Mr. Duncan did go to Brussels, but then he had to come through Dulles. You have to kind of go through one of these international airports to connect here. He wasn't able to fly directly to Dallas, but one of the first things that happened when those checks were announced is you had some Texas lawmakers saying we need to add Houston and Dallas to the list, because this is where the epicenter of this is, and they're not on the initial list of airports that are having the increased screening.
Mm-hmm. So is this increased screening, do you believe, like a first step toward a travel ban, or an alternative too?
I think the administration hopes it's an alternative, but if you keep seeing more cases, you keep seeing pressure building for a total travel ban.
Yeah. So public concern, has it increased since we've heard about this first case of Ebola in Dallas? It's a question of the day. How about your concerns? 866-55-PRESS. No need for panic, but it does seem to me it is certainly of concern, particularly because of the breach of protocol down there at the hospital. Keith Laing is with us from The Hill. Join the conversation when we come back at 866-55-PRESS, our toll-free number.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Two anti-government, self-described revolutionaries have shot up a pizza restaurant as well as a Walmart in Las Vegas.
The internationally syndicated political series, The David Pakman Show, provides progressive talk, analysis, and interviews with the nation's youngest radio and television host, David Pakman. Find out more and catch up on all the latest episodes by visiting our website at freespeech.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
13 minutes before the top of the hour, we're talking about the latest news from Dallas. A healthcare worker, a nurse, has contracted, who was treating Thomas Eric Duncan, the patient from West Africa, from Liberia, who died of Ebola last week. She was treating him, one of the team of people at the hospital treating him. She was monitoring her own condition and determined that she had a little fever last Friday or Saturday night, I guess, went into the hospital and was diagnosed with Ebola. Dr. In studio with us, Keith Laing from The Hill, who's been covering particularly the transportation aspects of the story for The Hill. Keith, I was just reading that Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institutes of Health here in Bethesda, he spoke yesterday with reporters and said that this proves that the system worked. The system worked because she was monitoring herself, and she discovered she had this, some symptoms. She went in, she's diagnosed, and so she's being cared for. But the fact that she got the disease sort of shows that the system didn't work and that there was, they say, what they call a breach of protocol, meaning somehow, and that's a mystery, wearing all of this gear, she did something wrong. Yes.
Yeah, there's been a lot of concern about the protocols that were followed or not followed, particularly at the Dallas hospital where Mr. Duncan was first diagnosed, because he went in September, I believe, the end of September, early October, and was sent home.
Right.
In his first trial. So,
first breach of protocol. Right.
And so there's been a lot of discussion about which protocols were followed, and that's something that the president has even addressed himself. He said the same thing, that protocols are working, but there are obviously questions.
And Dr. Frieden from the CDC yesterday in his news conference said they had talked to this nurse. She could not identify any one time in all the times that she was with this patient where she remembered doing anything wrong. But somehow, either in removing the garments or maybe in administering one procedure, there was some slip up somewhere, which again raises a question, I think, of how good these protocols are, and also how many hospitals are equipped to deal with this. I mean, take a hospital, just pick one at random, Sibley Hospital, right?
No.
How can we be confident that somebody today walked in Sibley and said, I'm in West Africa and I've got a fever, that they would have all of this equipment, all this gear, and know the protocols?
Yeah, and you have I've seen some discussion about how prevalent malaria is in that part of the world. So you come back and you have a fever, and people automatically assume you have Ebola, and you could just have malaria, which is a scary thing of its own right.
Now I want to come back to the area you've been dealing with, which is the transportation sector, on a couple of points. I asked whether this was a first step toward a travel ban or an alternative. Anytime, and I go to the White House briefings every day, and Josh Earnest always says, no, as you pointed out, we want to get the healthcare workers into West Africa, so a travel ban would really interfere with that. Well, why not a one-way travel ban? Couldn't you have a one-way travel ban, meaning you can take supplies in, you can take people in, but people can't get on a plane and get out of there?
That's what members of Congress are saying. They're saying that you could have a ban on commercial flights, and you can still have your cargo planes going in and going in with supplies. And
use military planes to get the healthcare workers in there.
That's a debate that's ongoing and probably will continue as this unfolds.
There is another related story where I saw that, I forget what they're called, but the workers who clean the aircraft at LaGuardia were going on strike because they said they did not have sufficient protection in a time of Ebola, right, to go in and clean these planes. That was too risky, too dangerous. Which raises the question for me is, how many flights in LaGuardia come from West Africa?
None, as you said earlier. But that just shows how widespread, especially in the aviation industry and the airline industry, how widespread this concern is. They've been out front. The head of Airlines for America was giving a talk last week, and he said, we think people should keep flying. It's completely safe to fly, but the fact that they have to come out and try to reassure people, and that was a day after the air workers said they were going on strike. And in that case, the World Health Organization ended up coming in and doing a training, and part of their concern was that those workers were saying they had to buy their own equipment. They would have to buy their own hazmat suits, for instance.
Yeah.
And so they were saying that was fine before this heightened awareness, but now the company should provide it if you want me to go in and clean the toilets after people come off the plane.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it. I mean, it is a risky situation. It just any time dealing with that kind of cleanup. But we may see airline workers with hazmat suits from now on these planes. So.
Well, we saw the ones in the Dominican, so we know that they have them somewhere. They were met by officials from that country. But.
So for the time being, you think what we're looking at is a continuation of the extra screening at 5 airports, maybe adding an airport or two, and that's what we're going to see in terms of response on travel.
That's what we see for now. If the pressure keeps building, the administration may have to revisit that. But they haven't even said they're going to add any other airports. They've said that if we just do these 5 airports, we'll catch 94% of the people that are coming in, and that this screening should be able to give people the information they need to launch the appropriate protocols.
Right. Keith, all right, thanks so much for coming in today, and your good work at The Hill. It's thehill.com, of course. I'll be back and bring you up to date on the present schedule for today. Thanks, Keith, so much.
Thanks for having me.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay. You can't get it done in 2 hours. We never can get it done in 2 hours. Too bad the free speech is going to drop us for the 3rd hour, but you don't have to drop out. Just go over to our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKR-TV. Ray Locker from the USA Today will be here with us for the entire hour as a friend of Bill, and then we'll be joined by Jess McIntosh, Communications Director for the Great Emily's List, to talk about some of the important Democratic women running for office this year. Stay with us for hour number 3 on TawkrTV.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves, would you like a bag? What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, any excuse for a holiday or a day off? The White House is taking advantage of Columbus Day to shut down. No public events or private events announced on the president's schedule, and no White House briefing. So there you've got it. The president did in Los Angeles Friday announce a new national monument, the San Gabriel Mountains. If we have
Today, I'm using my executive authority to designate the San Gabriel Mountains as a national monument.
350,000 acres of that area east of Los Angeles, now under national protection. The president has put more lands under national protection than any other president in history. When we come back, Ray Locker will be here from USA Today as a friend to Bill for the entire hour. Jess McIntosh will be joining us also from Emily's List.
Is the
So
Bill
stay
Press
around.
Show.
West here reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions. So from trees and other plants,
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now. We're putting these filters in the bags and we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
The most important issue on this planet right now is to protect and conserve biodiversity in the world's oceans. And I don't think people realize just how intimate our connection is with the oceans themselves. Not only do they provide the very foundation of life and control our weather, but life just simply could not exist without a healthy ocean. The real problem, though, is apathy. It's all out of sight. It's all out of mind, and people don't even think about it. But it doesn't matter whether you live in Peoria or on the coast. The fact is, whatever happens in the ocean affects all life forms on the planet Earth. If the oceans die, then civilization collapses. We all die. We cannot live on this planet without the oceans. This is, in fact, not the planet Earth. It's the planet ocean, but because we're a land-dwelling species, we refer to it as Earth. But it is the planet ocean, and the oceans are the heart and the foundation of all life on the planet.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies in Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans. Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now. Please.
Around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
It's Columbus Day. I don't know why. It should be Leif Erikson Day. That's my point. He was here 500 years before Columbus. Let's get it right. Hello, everybody. I just pissed off the entire Italian-American community, I guess. But we've got the Scandinavians with us. Hello, and happy Monday, October 13th. So good to see you. The Bill Press Show coming to you live from Washington, D.C., booming out to you on your local progressive talk radio station, and booming out to you worldwide on our video stream at youtube.com/TawkrTV. Hope you had a great weekend. Watched some great baseball. Orioles didn't do too well. The Royals are red hot, and the Giants and the Cardinals. What a great matchup. 1-1 in that particular play. So we've got lots to talk about today, not just the sports of the weekend, but the news of the day. Joining us to help us through the next hour, Ray Locker, who is enterprise editor here in Washington for USA Today. That means he's in charge of everybody that works for USA Today. Hello, Ray. Nice to see you.
Great to be here, Bill.
I'll give you that title. You know, David Jackson, Susan Page, they all work for you, see, so.
Well, we won't tell them that.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be here.
Here's a friend of Bill for the entire hour with our team, Peter Ogburn.
Hey.
Peter. Peter is over there, not here, because Elisa Murphy's got the day off, so Peter's wearing both hats, if not 2 or 3 or 4 more today. Alicia Cruz here. Ready to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. Don't forget, and if you're looking at us, not just listening, you can thank our videographer, Cyprian Bolding, here on the job, as always. And, you know, if you're a candidate, Ray, for U.S. Senate or for Congress or for governor, no matter which party, one of the biggest thrills in your life would be to have the President of the United States or the First Lady come out and campaign for you, right? There's nothing better than that in terms of raising money, getting publicity. It's the highlight of any campaign. And so Michelle Obama went out to Iowa to campaign for, we haven't seen the president, we'll talk about that a little later, show up with many candidates, mainly because they haven't invited him. But the First Lady's been invited more often, and she showed up for Bruce Braley, the Senate candidate, Democratic Senate candidate in Iowa. There's just one little thing she forgot before she got up to the podium, or somebody forgot to tell her, here's the First Lady.
I am beyond thrilled to be here today to support your next senator from Iowa, our friend Bruce Bailey. You need to elect Bruce Bailey to the U.S. Senate. You got to do it. Leaders like Bruce Bailey. So we need to elect leaders like Bruce Bailey who will do the same. Just think about how many precincts all of us just in this room right now could swing for Bruce Bailey. You can go to vote.brucebailey.com. That's vote.brucebailey.com. Or even better, you can... Braley, what did I say? I'm losing it.
Oh, man.
7 times.
Ouch.
She says Bruce Bailey. Oh, man. You know, a little advanced work there, huh?
Well, somewhere Bruce Bailey, who is running for something somewhere, is very happy.
We're proud to announce that the First Lady has endorsed me for dog catcher in Waukesha County. Bruce Bailey has this thing locked up now.
So, if you were standing there, and I'm sure he was standing alongside of her, what do you say? I mean, I think I would have interrupted her. I think
after the third or fourth time?
The third time, I would have said, Mrs. Obama, here's a sign. Right?
You know,
here's a bumper sticker.
She's here. I'm with her. You know, figure out my name later.
Yeah.
Put the name tag on.
Write the check.
Right.
An embarrassing moment for her all the way around. So Ray Lockyer here with us for this first half hour, for the whole hour, and then we'll be joined at the half by Jess McIntosh from Emily's List. But first, we'll get the big stories of the day from Peter Ogburn.
Oh, yeah, just a couple of other stories making news. You know, coffee has lots of health benefits, Bill. I know you don't drink coffee, but we read every so often.
It. I just don't like it.
No, yeah. I know. But there are a lot of health benefits. Every year, it seems like there's another study that talks about how good it is for you in one way, shape, or form. Well, a new study from the researchers at the National Cancer Institute found that people who drink higher amounts of coffee they had lower levels of abnormal liver enzymes, so it's good for your liver. Now, one thing that's different about this study than other studies is they looked at both caffeinated and decaf coffee, and they say it doesn't matter if it's leaded or unleaded, so to speak. It's all good for your liver.
All right. Well, I'm taking a chance with my liver by not drinking coffee.
There you go.
Not going to change.
There you go. Today is October 13th. It's Columbus Day. It's also No Bra Day. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and so there is a movement for women to not wear brassieres today to raise awareness to breast cancer. I report, you decide. Just putting it out there for you.
Well, I haven't been very far today. I can't tell whether women are following this or not. Did you come in on the Metro?
I did. I did not notice that.
You didn't notice? Okay.
Just letting you know. That's it.
It's a little creepy when I start to try to notice that.
I
usually get escorted to the exit.
Don't ask anybody. Madam, are you wearing a bra today or not? That's not a good idea.
A little survey. Right.
Another day, another Nobel Prize winner, this time in economics. The winner is French economist Jean Tirole, has won the 2014 Nobel Prize for Economics. Tirole is a former MIT student and head of economics at Toulouse University in France. He spent 30 years studying how a small number of large firms can dominate markets and the damage that it can do, and how governments should respond. Sound familiar? Maybe just a couple years too late for this, but congratulations to Jean Tirole.
Where was he in 2008 when we needed him?
Right.
Yes. We got to start, Ray, with, if you're President Obama and you've got ISIS to deal with, and you got Secret Service to deal with, and you got the VA to deal with, and then you wake up one morning and they say, what, really, Ebola? This on top of everything else. But this is one case where there's not a lot the president can do, even though he'll get blamed for it by some people.
You have to show that you're doing something. I mean, obviously, you take a lot of meetings. You go where you can go, where you're not going to be at risk of exposure. People want to see that you're doing something. They want action. If you're not acting appropriately, then they tune out, or they think that you don't care.
And so what the president did yesterday was he asked the CDC to make sure that they step up the investigation of this nurse catching the disease in Dallas, to make sure they find out what happened exactly, how she got it.
Right.
To protect her and particularly other members of the team who are going to now be treating her or any other patients. I thought it was a little disconcerting, though, that we've been told that the CDC's on top of this. They've got the protocols down. And yet, at this hospital where they let the one guy go the first time, when they shouldn't have, and that was a breach of protocol. And now this woman the nurse has caught the disease, a second breach of protocol. How many slip-ups, right, before you say maybe they don't have it down?
Well, I mean, that's a possibility, and it's bad news for that hospital. I think, beyond just this Ebola thing, people are going to probably question whether they should go to this place for anything. And the problem like you have with economic crises, et cetera, you don't want to create a run on the healthcare system. You don't want people to panic. I don't think there is a reason to panic, but that's always the kind of balancing act that you're trying to do, to show appropriate concern, but also not have people freak out, because when they do, it's chaos. And you see that in West Africa, in the countries where they have Ebola.
Mm-hmm. You know what? By the way, you may know this. I didn't until yesterday, because I was going over to Fox News to do a show on this, and the driver who took me over there actually knew a lot about this told me that this disease was actually first discovered in 1976. It's been around since then.
Yeah.
And it was discovered on the banks of the Ebola River, which is why we call it Ebola. So it's been around a long time. And again, we're talking about now a case of one person who died in this country coming here from West Africa, and then an American person treating him. So it's relatively confined, and it's only one homegrown case so far. No need for panic, but you just got to hope that they do have the procedures right.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is a situation where anybody who comes from those three nations in West Africa, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, I mean, they have to be carefully scrutinized. And unfortunately, it's a kind of profiling, but it's something that I think, more and more people realize you need in this case. And that means, how do you deal with them when they fly here?
Right.
When look, if a guy shows up at the hospital and says, I don't feel good, and you're like, well, where are you from? Where have you been? And the guy says, Liberia.
You're bingo. Right.
Yeah. I mean, not like, hey, go home, good luck, take an aspirin.
No. So looking at the president's schedule following him the last week or so, it's been two issues, Ebola and ISIS.
Right.
Last week, we had the 2-month anniversary of airstrikes against ISIS in Iraq, and maybe two weeks of that 2 months also in Syria. What's the impact? What's the effect? What good have these raids done? Do we know?
Well, I think, based on what I've seen out of the military, is they've knocked out a significant number of ISIS assets in Iraq and Syria. But there's plenty more, and this is not something that's going to be over anytime soon. Remember what happened in Kosovo in '99? Everybody said we had to have boots on the ground. We had to go into Kosovo. We had to knock back the Serbs. And it took a while before that to take hold. We never put boots on the ground there. We never sent troops into Kosovo to fight the Serbian army. This could be a similar situation. It's too early to tell.
Yeah. But then, as you said, they have certainly knocked out some installations, some tanks that destroyed that. But we also see they haven't really given up any territory.
Right.
The Mosul Dam, okay, that was important.
Right.
But other than this huge, vast areas that they occupy. And last week, they came very close to getting this town of Kobani, which I guess is not yet in ISIS hands, but very close to it. And the report I saw last night on the news, suddenly we're talking about Baghdad being imperiled again.
Right.
So, and let me just add to that, I'm just wondering what the strategy is. The boots on the ground are not going to be American boots, but everybody says we need boots on the ground. They're going to be these moderate Syrians or the Iraqi military, and it's 5 or 6 months away before they're going to be ready.
Right. Well, you're looking at maybe the Saudi military, maybe the UAE, other armies in the region, maybe the Turks. They have to decide whether they want it bad enough. Do they think ISIS is a big enough threat? I mean, from what we see, the mass beheadings, the executions, in all these areas where ISIS is gone, that seems like a situation you don't want these people as your neighbors.
Right.
And they need to decide whether they want to step up and deal with it. So far, they don't seem to want it bad enough. ISIS wants it. That's why they're taking over a lot of these areas.
Yeah. And the big question is Turkey and Kobani, this town right on the border of Turkey. And yet the Turkish government, we don't understand their reluctance. I'm sure there's more to it. Maybe because they don't want to be allies with the Kurdish people that they've been fighting for so long.
That's right.
Is that what it's all about?
Well, I mean, that's a big part of it. Is there's a significant part of eastern Turkey that is controlled by Kurds, Kurdish dominated. They would like to be part of a greater Kurdistan where it incorporates parts of northern Iraq, parts of Iran. They don't support the Turkish government, which is becoming more and more Muslim-oriented, more and more Sunni. And so the Turkish government doesn't want to get in bed with them too much. And they have to decide what's the bigger threat, the PKK, the Kurdish rebels, or ISIS.
Do you buy the criticism that we've heard from John McCain originally and most recently from Leon Panetta, that if only the president had armed the moderate Syrian opposition 3 years ago, we would not be in the position we are today of fighting ISIS?
Well, I'm not going to say whether I agree with them or not. I'm going to tell you that I know other people did not agree with them at the time. We talked to people in the military whose business it is to know who these folks are. They have said that there really hasn't been a moderate Syrian opposition, certainly not one that's big enough to control weapons that we would send them. And if you look back what happened in the last year, the last 2 years, when we've talked about sending arms to people in Syria, people all across the ideological spectrum have said, don't send them weapons because you don't know where they're going to end up. I've seen videos from various rebel groups, where people are wielding M4s and other U.S. supplied arms, and they're not U.S. backed people.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get a weapon out there, look what happens in Washington or any city in the country. Arms go wherever they need to go. They're fungible. It's like water. And so if you send a bunch of weapons somewhere in the Middle East, they're not going to stay in the hands of the people you want them to have.
Yeah. You talked a little earlier about the analogy with Kosovo. And this one, I think the analogy is Afghanistan way back, where we were just handing out weapons to anybody who said they were going to fight the...
Here, have a Stinger missile.
Yeah.
And then you're worried about somebody, showing up outside of Dulles with a Stinger missile. It happens. And that area is so free-flowing, it's hard to decide and hard to know who you can trust.
Amen. Ray Locker here with us from USA Today. We will be right back and take your calls, your questions, your comments on what's happening with Ebola or with ISIS. We're just getting started here. We'll be right back. Don't forget the number, 866-55-PRESS.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes you.
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat?
This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour, Ray Locker here with us as a friend of Bill for this hour from USA Today, usatoday.com. We'll be joined at the half by Jess McIntosh from Emily's List. So, Ray, the president was on the West Coast 2 days last week to my home state of California and L.A. and San Francisco, doing several fundraisers for Democratic candidates. Closed-door fundraisers. He's doing a lot of those lately, not standing with many candidates. Why?
Because they don't want him around. He's not doing great in the polls. I mean, they want his money.
Yeah.
Come shake the money tree for me, but I don't want to be seen with you. You know, maybe they're afraid they'll call him Bruce Bailey. You know,
that could never happen, right?
No. But it's pretty sad, isn't it, though? On the other hand, I guess he knows his role, too, right? He's not going to spoil the party by showing up.
Right. I mean, they want his money. They want his get-out-the-vote machine. They want all the benefits. They don't want any of the downsides. But who isn't like that? I mean, it happens every time, second term, midterm elections. You know, President Bush did the same thing in 2006. You know, President Clinton was a little bit different in 98. People actually wanted to be seen with him. He actually picked up seats in that midterm. It was a very historical anomaly. But very often, presidents are in the same situation that President Obama is in right now.
And still, President Clinton and Hillary Clinton are very much in demand by candidates. Right. Yeah. Forgetting all that other bad stuff, right?
Hey, he was impeached. Really? Did that happen?
We still want him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is he left on a high.
Yeah.
And, you know, the economy was doing great when he ended his administration. And I predict that if you look at the trends now, the economy is going to is doing a lot better now. Maybe President Obama does the same thing in 2 years.
They'll want him 2 years from now,
right.
but not this year. Right. We'll be right back with Jess McIntosh, speaking of midterm elections.
This
with
is
Emily's
the
List.
Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Streaming live video right now at youtube.com/TawkrTV. That's TAWKR-TV. This is The Bill Press Show.
You bet. 33 minutes after the hour now here. Monday, October 13. Good to have you with us today on this Columbus Day holiday. Not a holiday for us. Hope it is for you. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, brought to you today by the United Steelworkers and their international president, the one and only Leo Gerard. The United Steelworkers, North America's largest industrial union. They're still making stuff, making steel, representing 1.2 million active and retired members. Check out their website at usw.org. What are we now, 22 days, 23 days?
22, I think.
22 from the midterm elections. Ray Locker is here from USA Today, usatoday.com. We're now joined by Jess McIntosh, Communications Director for the great organization Emily's List. Hi, Jess.
Great
nice
to be
see
here.
You. Thank you. And we're going to talk midterms, particularly midterms where there are strong women candidates.
And there are so
running.
many of them.
I know. I don't know how you keep up with
it's
all
really
of them.
hard.
But one that we've been very interested in, let's do some governor's races first.
Please.
Okay. Wisconsin. Scott Walker up against Mary Burke, who has run a hell of a campaign.
Yeah, she really has. This has been one of my very favorite races to watch all year. Mary Burke has a pretty non-traditional bio for a candidate. She's a first-time candidate, so running for governor right out of the bat is already, it's new. But she was a Trek Bicycles. Everybody knows Trek Bikes. It's a great Wisconsin company that her father actually founded in a barn on their property and turned into a global business, which she was an executive at. She then served in the Commerce Department, and she's been really involved in like philanthropic deeds in Wisconsin, heavily invested in the Boys and Girls Club, just kind of your pillar of the community type. So this is exactly the kind of person that you want to run for public office. And it seems like they never do. They just stay doing good in the private sector or, with volunteer work. And she got in, and it was pretty tough for her to get traction in the beginning there, because Scott Walker is sort of seen as this like larger than life, he's going to run for president, so of course his reelection is already a given kind of figure, which of course he's not. And she has been slowly but surely eating away at his lead, going from double digits down to single digits down to the last few have them totally tied up.
And Scott Walker's had his share of problems along the way, Ray.
Right. He's been involved in some questionable campaign finance dealings that have had some investigations from DAs in Wisconsin. The federal judge tried to stop it. That got tossed out. It's kind of like a lingering infection that's been plaguing him in his campaign.
And he has been, he'd all but announced that he's running for president, right? He's been traveling and raising money.
Oh, yeah. And if he wins, and if he... I thought he was going to win convincingly. I was very surprised when she popped up and like, hey, wow, he's got a race. The idea was that he wins by a good margin. He's going to run for president. I mean, that would be a natural. He fits in well with the base. He would have been, a really good candidate for them and may still be, but you got to get reelected first.
His positions have turned into a bigger problem even than the campaign finance scandals that Ray was talking about, which has been surprising this year.
Well, last week, what I saw is he suddenly is trying to have it both ways.
The choice
isn't
ad.
on choice.
Yeah, I mean, Scott Walker is sort of synonymous with like one of the most extreme anti-choice agendas in the country. Like this guy is way to the right on this.
And was always in the
That's part of his brand. Is like I'm gonna speak the truth.
I am
and be
pro-life. No exceptions for incest or
He's
rape
not the
or
only
anything.
person who's doing that on the Republican side. You see a lot of that about
Scott Brown.
contraceptives.
Yep.
Larry Hogan, a Republican running in Maryland, talking about he favors over-the-counter birth control. A lot of people Republican candidates are trying to do that to kind of confuse or show that they favor contraceptives, not necessarily abortion.
Right.
And, it's made by a sweet spot for people, but a lot of people don't buy it.
No, I think they're not good actors on this issue, and they never have been, and they can't fix themselves in the last 22 days of an election, for Pete's sake. But I think the idea that so Emily's List put an ad up on the air that hit Scott Walker for his extreme anti-choice stance. And Scott Walker responded with an ad that he had already filmed, cut, and shipped to the studios, which is a pretty unusual move that you give a news studio and in case of emergency break glass, play this ad, saying, and he says in the beginning, I am pro-life, but that's the only part of the ad that sounds at all pro-life. That's why I want to leave the final decision up to a woman and her doctor. He has never wanted to leave that's just a lie. He might tweak the ad, I think, says this legislation would leave the final decision or something that makes it technically true. But the man doesn't believe that. And the fact that he knew he needed to sit on the couch, do the gauzy, stare at the camera, soft music thing, which is usually reserved for like responding to a scandal. He had to do that about his own choice position in 2014. I think it's a sea change.
He knew it would end up being a problem. Yeah. I didn't. I see Peter staring. I didn't know whether he had that.
Still looking for it.
Oh, okay. All right. I knew we played the ad last week, and I was just going to play it quickly if we had it. But let's just move on in the interest of time. A couple up in New England, a couple of governor's races there. Massachusetts, Rhode Island.
Yeah, Rhode Island.
Don't hear a lot about them.
No, well, honestly, you never hear a lot about governor's races, which is really a shame because so many of these really important fights are happening in state houses, and who controls them really does matter. But it is sort of tough to get it into the political mainstream that we ought to care about who the governor in Rhode Island is. I think sort of everybody understands that your senator affects me, but people don't understand that your governor affects me too. But in Rhode Island, we have a really exciting candidate, Gina Raimondo, who is looking very good. In Massachusetts, Martha Coakley is ahead. It's close. She had a really tough primary, which I think nobody was really expecting her to have. But she's working like crazy and doing a really great job. And right now, we only have one Democratic woman governor in the country, just one. Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire, who is also up for re-election and doing great. But we need to give her some reinforcements.
By the way, in governors, it's certainly many people learned the lesson about how important governors are with reapportionment the last time around.
Right.
Well, it really does matter. State legislative races matter and governor's races matter.
Well, you have probably a Republican House majority locked in for another couple of decades because of reapportionment. The 2010 blowout, which put so many Republican state legislators in there, so many Republican governors, they do the maps the way they want. You know from being in California, Democrats, when they control that process, as they have for a long time, draw the maps the way they want to their partisan advantage. Look at Illinois, the same thing. Republicans have been doing it in various states. North Carolina, great example. Florida, although you saw that map get kicked out not too long ago. That's what happens when you're in charge.
Right. And now there's more and more of a move, as we've done in California, to move the reapportionment away from the politicians into the hands of maybe some whatever.
Some objective folks, maybe?
Objective folks, right. But the point is, and I've heard many people say in the Democratic Party that they have made a big mistake in focusing on Senate races and House races and ignoring the governor's races and state legislative races
and that's
to their
changing.
peril.
That's changing.
Because then they turn around and say, whoa, how do we get all these extremists in the House. Well, they got there because the districts were drawn so that they can't lose.
That's your bench. You don't have a bench if you don't have people who know how to run campaigns on a lower level.
Yeah.
In the state house, then they don't run for Congress. I mean, look at Wisconsin. They got a good candidate now for governor, but traditionally that comes from your bench in the legislature, in Congress. And if you don't develop those people because you have a bad map, then you're hurting.
I have to ask you about Wendy Davis in Texas.
Yes, this race is so exciting. Like it's finally come down to single digits. We always said that it was going to tighten up at the end, and that is exactly what happened. It continues to be an uphill climb. It continues to be Texas, but she is running just a heck of a campaign, and she is keeping herself up there and in the news. And Abbott, frankly, has had to deal with so many scandals. If he were running anywhere other than Texas, it would be a total non-starter. But at some point, I mean, there's going to be so much discussion about what this electorate looks like when it actually turns out, because I think nobody really knows. Nobody knows what an energized Democratic base in Texas looks like, and we're going to find out for the first time this year.
And Ray, the feeling is that Texas is going to turn blue again someday. But is it there yet?
It's not there yet. It's getting there. You have to have good candidates. You have to develop your bench. You have to get out the vote effort. You look at it. I mean, we have
and
a map.
You have to have the demographic.
You have to have a demographic.
We'll see.
But you'll see. I mean, we have a map on the wall in our office that shows voter performance in the 2012 election, and there is this little, very dark blue dot on it for Dallas County. 55% at least for Obama in the last presidential race in Texas. Now, remember what everybody said about Dallas when Kennedy got shot down.
Right.
Demographics change. People move different places. And that's happening in Texas and a lot of places, in the big cities, along the Rio Grande Valley. Is it enough to win this year? I don't think so. But 4 years, 8 years, could be.
I think it could be this year. I think Wendy's really exciting, and I think the woman running for the lieutenant governor position, Leticia Van de Putte, would be the first Latina lieutenant governor in Texas, and has done an amazing job of making sure that the Hispanic base is registered and ready to vote. I think we just don't know what it looks like yet.
What you see in states like that where they've had one-party control for a long time is the rot sets in, regardless of which party it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I lived in Florida in the 70s, 80s. I mean, now it's almost all Republican in terms of statewide elected officials, except for Bill Nelson. And people got tired of Democrats. Republicans got hungrier. Demographics changed. Now they're changing back. Same way in Texas. I mean, kind of the rot set in there with the Democrats. Now it's going with the Republicans. Who knows?
Well, I thought the change would come with Kinky Friedman, but we didn't make that, so maybe it'll come with Wendy Davis.
Oh, no.
Well, Senate race is coming up next year with Jess McIntosh and Ray Locker from USA Today. Jess with Emily's List, of course. Join us. Questions, comments about a governor's race or a Senate race in your state? You know how to get here, 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately I've been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At 12 minutes before the top of the hour, in studio with us this whole hour is a friend of Bill, Ray Locker from USA Today. He is kind enough to let us talk to Susan Page and David Jackson every once in a while. And,
I let him out.
Even more kind to come in this hour on this Monday morning and hear from Emily's List, emilieslist.org, an organization you should support for the great work that they're doing. Their communications director, Jess McIntosh.
Thanks.
Hi, Jess.
Hi.
So I remember when Emily's List was founded. Way back then. Been with you ever since. Let's start Senate races. Where we have Democratic women candidates strong.
I care
North
about the
Carolina.
guys, too. I really do. Personally, at least. I care about the Democratic.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
North Carolina.
Kay Hagan.
She's doing amazingly. And remember, I think I probably sat here a year ago and said that this was going to be the absolute
Everybody
front
said this was
lines.
going to be the test case this year.
This is it.
North Carolina, right?
She's I mean, it's close, and I certainly wouldn't want to deter any of your listeners from supporting her or sending their dollars or prayers her way because she needs it. But she's doing great. She's been consistently slightly ahead in an environment where most Democrats cannot say that.
Tough state and one Republicans were really counting on, right, Ray?
Yeah, big time. And I think it'll be a bellwether for 2016.
Mm-hmm.
She wins this race in a bad year for the president. Bad year probably for Democrats, does a lot with the ground game. Then I think you put that in an extremely purple column in 2 years, and it's probably winnable. Just like in 2008 when Obama won by a very small margin. He didn't lose by much 2 years ago, and I think if she does well there.
It's interesting, no matter what the wave is at 30,000 feet, a strong candidate can make a difference.
Right.
Absolutely.
Running a good campaign
I
can
also
make
think
a difference.
The interesting dynamic in North Carolina has been that this is really, Republicans all over the country have tried so hard to make 2014 a referendum on Obama because they have literally nothing else to run on. In North Carolina, it's really turned into a referendum on Republican policies because the Republican running in this race, Tom Tillis, was the Senate Majority Leader, who was in charge of this incredibly divisive right-wing agenda that they put through that state house. Devastating cuts to education, some of the worst across the board, extreme anti-choice measures. They were the ones that infamously attached an anti-choice rider to a motorcycle safety bill. I mean, they pursued an agenda that was so right-wing, the backlash came up with Moral Mondays, where North Carolinians literally protest every Monday outside the Capitol.
There have been some surprises. We don't have time to get into all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising turnout or turn of events, I should say, in South Dakota and in Kansas.
Yep.
So two races that against states that Republicans
I'd
might have
argue
counted
Georgia,
on.
too.
And I was going to say, and also then in Georgia. So
Well-
these are three considered safe states, which suddenly now have question marks.
How much harder will it
Tell
be
us-
for Republicans to get 6 seats if they have to defend in Kansas or South Dakota or
it
Georgia?
means they won't need 6; they may need 7 or 8.
Right.
But
What if they need 9?
Georgia, tell us about Georgia.
So Georgia's actually
Michelle Nunn.
is running a fantastic campaign. She has another non-traditional bio, sort of like Mary Burke in Wisconsin, where she comes from a philanthropic background. It's that tri-sector public-private philanthropic experience. She's just done a great job, and she is running against shady businessman David Perdue. So when he made it through his primary,
Not that we're
everybody
one-sided
said,
here or anything,
look, it's basically it's an
shady
honorific
business.
at this point.
Yeah.
It's shady businessman David Perdue. When he made it through his primary, everybody said, "Oh no, this is the good one. You guys are really in trouble. There's no way she can win with this. Like, he's a businessman. Everybody loves businessmen." But we knew that he had some stuff going on, and he had maybe not dealt honestly with Georgians in his business career. And sure enough, a pretty fantastic testimony leaked from an old bankruptcy hearing, where he said that he had spent most of his career outsourcing, and when he was pressed on it, he said he was proud of that. So there's been no talk of anything else in the race since that came to light a week ago, and I think Michelle Nunn is really in a position to capitalize.
She's got good blood, political blood, right?
Well, that's what they got going for them in Georgia in this cycle. Jason Carter, the grandson of President Jimmy Carter, running for governor. Michelle Nunn, daughter of Sam Nunn, who was 4-term senator there. I mean,
and very popular, both parties.
Right,
Sam Nunn.
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
and respected.
Yeah.
And
he probably could still be in the Senate now if he didn't bug out 18 years ago. I mean, this is his seat. It's interesting. I mean, people thought that Perdue would be a good candidate, but that's the problem you have with self-funders.
Yep.
There's a reason they made a lot of money, and a lot of them are very good reasons, but a lot of those reasons are also the kind that can blow back on you. We saw it with Romney. We've seen it with a lot of candidates like that.
It's interesting, yeah, and maybe with Rick Snyder in Florida as well. Huh?
Right.
Self-funded, who had his problems with his business, which have come back to haunt him too.
And that was a guy who I thought, there's no way he's going to have a race. And then I started seeing polls like, what's happening? He could lose.
With Charlie Crist, right?
No, Rick Scott, Snyder in Michigan.
I'm sorry.
But Rick Scott had problems that were.
Yes,
I mean,
right.
they paid $1 billion settlement.
Are we confusing our shady business?
Right.
And,
yes.
but it proves the point, doesn't it? I mean, that there are things that happen in American business. Some of them great.
Right.
And then some of them that people go, wow, I don't like that at all.
Right. Well, David Perdue had to pay a $15 million settlement for one of the largest gender discrimination and pay lawsuits. I mean, and this is all out there in public. So the fact that Republicans are so quick to throw these guys up and say, yes, this is the one we want.
Right. That's all we've got time for, but you can read all about it in USA Today every day, usatoday.com, and you can find out all about these important races that Jess is involved in at Emily's List at emilyslist.org. And we thank you both for your time. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Be right back. Great.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law.
Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
All right, that's it. We're out of time today. Have a great Columbus Day. Those of you lucky enough to have the day off. Tomorrow we'll be joined, as always, on a Tuesday, by Arthur Delaney from Huffington Post and Igor Volsky from Think Progress. Enjoy your Tuesday, folks. Come back again tomorrow morning. Enjoy your Monday, rather. Come back again tomorrow morning. We'll be looking for you.
This is the Bill Press Show.